Imagine an artist who generates more than $700 million over the course of her career, who fills stadiums in minutes with crowds screaming her name, who sells more than $1.5 billion in perfumes that carry her essence and brand alone, who dominates every digital platform, every television screen, every conversation on social media and gossip magazines. But now, imagine that, for 13 long and tortuous years, that same artist couldn't write a check to pay her own debts. She couldn't buy a simple coffee in a coffee shop without asking permission, or even decide whether or not she could have children, get married, or just leave her house without constant supervision. That artist is Britney Spears, the pop princess who became a global symbol of youth, rebellion, and unbridled success. And her story isn't just a celebrity drama full of flashes and scandals that fill the covers of magazines. No, it's much deeper and darker than that. It's a business case study, a masterclass in how to build a multi-billion-dollar empire in the entertainment industry, where human talent is transformed into a financial asset pure and simple. While the world mocked her emotional breakdowns, commented on her mistakes as if they were free entertainment for mass consumption, and judged her mercilessly on forums and television shows, behind the scenes there was a relentless financial machine that turned every breath, every step on stage, every tear shed in public, and every song recorded in a studio into cold, hard cash. And we are not talking about ordinary money, modest profits, or a family business. We are talking about profit margins that in other industries would be considered impossible, almost miraculous, with returns that would make any CEO of Wall Street or Silicon Valley envy. But the question that really matters, the one that cuts like a knife through this whole narrative of glamour and tragedy, is this. Who ran this empire when the person whose name held it, whose face sold it, and whose talent propelled it had no control over absolutely anything? Because Britney wasn't the CEO of her own brand. She was not the owner of her own empire, her creative decisions, or her financial destiny. For more than a decade, it was treated as a depreciable asset, a valuable but replaceable human resource, a commodity that was meant to produce, generate revenue, and perform at its best, no matter the personal cost. The industry turned it into a traveling factory of hits, where every album, every tour, and every endorsement was a cog in a well-oiled machine. While the person behind the star collapsed under the weight of fame, the business thrived like never before, expanding into new markets, signing global deals, and accumulating fortunes for everyone involved but herself. And if you think this is a simple story about fame, madness, and redemption, you're wrong from start to finish. It's a story about pure money, about absolute control, and about how a multi-million-dollar empire can be built on a single human life, squeezing it to the limit without remorse. The Money Machine, from teenager to multi-million-dollar brand. Britney didn't start out as an up-and-coming artist fighting for a record deal in the shadows of Hollywood. No, she started out as a pure economic phenomenon, a diamond in the rough that the industry polished into an inexhaustible source of income. Since the age of 11, when she entered the famous The Mickey Mouse Club with future stars such as Justin Timberlake and Christina Aguilera, the industry had already identified 3 key things in her: a magnetic charisma that lit up the screen, an iron discipline forged in dance and singing classes since childhood, and a level of professionalism that surpassed that of most adult artists, making her look like a veteran in a girl's body. But the real shock, the moment when the Money Machine was turned on at full power, came with the release of Baby One More Time. It wasn't just a musical hit that dominated the Billboard charts for weeks. It was a cultural earthquake that shook the entertainment industry. The album sold more than 25 million copies worldwide, with music videos rotating non-stop on MTV, capturing the imagination of an entire generation of teenagers who saw Britney as a reflection of their own dreams and desires. The merchandising exploded. Backpacks with his face in shopping malls, magazines dedicated exclusively to his life, posters that adorned the rooms of millions of fans, advertisements on radio stations that repeated his name over and over again. Britney didn't just sing, he became a living symbol of American youth, a brand that transcended music to invade every aspect of pop culture. And symbols, as businessmen well know, sell as nothing more. Before she turned 18, she had already generated more than $100 million in gross income, a sum that would have made many millionaires. But for her, it was just the beginning of an expanding empire. Her image was so strong and so universally attractive that any product associated with her skyrocketed in sales, becoming pure gold for companies that bet on her. For example, Pepsi signed her for a staggering $8 million, an absolute record for a young artist at the time, for a commercial that showed her dancing on futuristic stages and became an advertising icon. Skechers chose her as the global face of the brand, boosting its sales of athletic shoes among teenagers. Her perfume line with Elizabeth Arden, starting with Curious in 2004, generated more than $1.5 billion in global sales over 2 decades, with fragrances that captured her playful and seductive essence, being sold in department stores around the world. Their tours became one of the most profitable shows of the decade, with tickets selling out in hours and sponsorships multiplying revenue. In addition, his media presence was so powerful that television networks paid millions for exclusive interviews, such as those he gave to Oprah or in special documentaries. But here's the most important and telling detail. All that breakneck growth was happening before Britney was even 25. The industry had found the perfect formula, a human product capable of generating hundreds of millions with impeccable consistency, year after year, without fail. Young Spears was a teenager turned executive without knowing it, an artist turned into a money machine without asking or fully understanding the implications. As the business grew by leaps and bounds, expanding into new markets such as Asia and Europe, the person behind the star was beginning to show subtle signs of emotional exhaustion that no one wanted to see or acknowledge publicly. The pressure of endless touring, expectations of constant perfection, and a lack of absolute privacy were beginning to take their toll. Because as long as Britney worked non-stop, producing hits and filling arenas, the entire system worked like a Swiss watch, generating fortunes for managers, record labels, and sponsors. No one wanted to stop the machine when it was at its peak of productivity. Public crisis, private opportunity. 2007 was the year that the whole world seemed to be amused by the tragedy of a real woman, turning her pain into a public spectacle that consumed itself like an endless reality show. Britney was experiencing 3 simultaneous crises that were intertwined in destructive ways. Her tumultuous divorce from Kevin Federline, a dancer who had been part of her team and who was now fighting for custody of her 2 young children. A fierce legal battle for that custody, where every detail was leaked to the press. And a relentless pursuit of media and paparazzi who followed her everywhere, capturing vulnerable moments such as the infamous head shave in a beauty salon, an act of desperation that went viral within hours. Every step Britney took was a sensationalist headline. Each cry, captured by hidden cameras, was a clip that was played on a loop in television programs. Every psychiatric hospitalization became a magazine cover with wild speculation about his mental state. The world watched with morbidity, commenting and judging from the comfort of their homes, turning their suffering into cheap entertainment. But while audiences reveled in the drama, the entertainment industry looked on with a cold, strategic calculation, seeing opportunities where others saw only chaos. Britney's emotional instability represented a serious problem for any ordinary artist, one that could pause careers or lead to temporary retirements. But for a multi-billion-dollar empire like his, one that depended on his image and constant productivity, it represented a unique opportunity for reorganization and consolidation of control. In February 2008, after an involuntary hospitalization under California's Law 5150, which allows psychiatric detentions for risk assessment, the court approved a conservatorship. A legal conservatorship originally designed for incapacitated adults, usually elderly people with advanced dementia or people with severe disabilities who are unable to care for themselves. Britney, one of the most productive and successful artists on the planet, capable of filling stadiums and generating millions with a single album, was declared legally incapable. But not incapable of working, recording music, or performing on stage, only unable to decide about his own life and finances. And there began the darkest and most controversial phase of the Britney Spears empire, a chapter where control became absolute and exploitation was disguised as protection. This guardianship was not an act of family charity. It was a strategic move that allowed stakeholders to reorganize the business without interruption. While the world remained focused on superficial scandals, the industry was looking at how to stabilize a valuable asset that was at risk of being lost. The conservatorship ensured that Britney continued to produce, but under a legal framework that eliminated any autonomy, turning her life into a well-managed financial balance. The new structure, full control. The conservatorship that was imposed on Britney divided her life into two clear and separate areas, as if it were a corporation with independent departments. First, his personal life, controlled by the conservatorship of the person, which defined even the smallest detail: what medications he took daily to maintain his stability, what time he could sleep or eat so as not to interfere with work schedules, if he could leave his house without an escort, with whom he could talk or meet to avoid negative influences, what she could post on social media without risking the brand's image, and even whether she could have children or make reproductive decisions. Second, his financial life, managed by the conservatorship of the estate, which was in charge of absolutely everything related to money, every record or advertising contract he signed, every world tour he planned, every personal purchase no matter how small, every investment in real estate or stocks, every tax payment to maximize deductions, and every tax decision that ensured the profitability of the empire. Britney worked tirelessly, making millions, but she couldn't authorize even a $20 purchase at a store without prior permission from the court or its administrators. Britney's father, Jamie Spears, along with a team of specialized lawyers and professional accountants, became the operational center of one of the most lucrative businesses in the music industry. They were overseen by independent administrators, court-appointed guardians, and associated firms such as TriStar Sports and Entertainment, led by Lou Taylor. It was a structure designed as if Britney were a multinational corporation, with quarterly boards of directors and reports, but without her owning herself or having a say in the meetings. The empire now had absolute, stable, and predictable control, eliminating any risk of impulsive decisions that could affect revenues. It was a perfect financial machine, with steady cash flows and long-term plans. Perfect for everyone except for the person who had built it with their talent and effort, who was trapped in a system that prioritized economic profit over their humanity. The perfect business model for everyone but her. The financial system that was born around Britney under the tutelage had an unforgiving and well-oiled logic. As long as she worked tirelessly, everyone involved won, and they won big. And we are not talking about modest gains. We are talking about an ecosystem where profit margins were extraordinary, with revenues multiplying year after year thanks to a network of interconnected contracts. Britney's father received a fixed annual salary plus percentages of gross income from tours and residences, encouraging him to keep her productive at all costs. Administrators charged high monthly fees to manage their estate, ensuring that every dollar was optimally invested. The attorneys representing the guardianship billed hundreds of thousands of dollars per year in legal fees, with court hearings that generated more work and more fees. The partner firms controlled bank accounts, property investments, and tax strategies that minimized taxes while maximizing returns. Music producers continued to receive perpetual royalties from their catalog of hits, a passive stream that did not depend on new recordings. Concert promoters made massive profits from each tour, selling tickets, merchandise, and VIP packages. It was a perfect ecosystem, a business model where each part fed off each other, creating a cycle of dependency that ensured the longevity of the empire. Except for one dark and disturbing detail: for this model to work perfectly, Britney had to be stable enough to work on stages and studios, but legally incapacitated enough not to make independent decisions that could alter the course of the business. That perverse balance was what kept the conservatorship alive for 13 years, a period in which Britney received medications that she herself described as debilitating and restrictive, had impossible schedules that ignored her exhaustion, could not take vacations without prior permission. Her phone was constantly monitored. Her personal relationships were filtered to avoid distractions. And if he refused to work, he knew there would be legal or family consequences. In any other industry, this level of control and exploitation would be a global scandal, a case for labor or human rights investigations. But here, in the entertainment world, it was normalized because the product, Britney, continued to sell albums, tickets, and perfumes. The financial model depended entirely on keeping it producing relentlessly, turning it into a replaceable cog in a machine that prioritized money over the person. Las Vegas, the goose that lays the golden egg. The Piece of Me residency in Las Vegas, which began in 2013 at the Planet Hollywood Resort and Casino, was the most profitable and emblematic phase of the empire under tutelage. It generated more than $130 million in net revenues, with more than 1 million tickets sold in its 4-year run, making it one of the most successful fixed shows in Sin City's history. The schedule was controlled to the millimeter, with low operating costs compared to world tours and astronomical sales of exclusive merchandising, such as t-shirts, posters, and themed accessories that sold out night after night. VIP packages that exceeded $2,000 per person included meet and greets, personal photos, and backstage access, adding layers of premium revenue. For the guardianship administrators, it was the perfect machine, stable, because Britney was in a fixed place without exhaustive travel, controlled with constant supervision of its equipment, predictable with fixed income per show, and extremely lucrative with margins exceeding 50% after costs. Albums like Glory were promoted directly at shows, driving streams and digital sales. The residency reinforced the public narrative that guardianship was necessary. If she can work like this, with so much energy and professionalism, it is because she is being well cared for and protected. But the reality for Britney was diametrically opposite. An exhausting routine of daily rehearsals that lasted hours, constant monitoring of her diet and medication to maintain her figure and performance, personal restrictions that isolated her from friends and family, and an agenda designed without considering her emotional or physical well-being. Every night on stage, under bright lights and deafening applause, Britney acted as if nothing was happening. But behind the scenes, the cumulative stress was immense. The residence not only generated money, it strengthened the structure that held it trapped, proving to the world that the empire could thrive even in the midst of internal controversies. The more successful the show was, the more the tutelage solidified as a business success. The empire is cracking. In 2019, the unthinkable happened in a system designed for absolute control. Britney said no decisively. He refused to rehearse for a new residency called Domination, a project that promised millions more in revenue. She refused to continue to be part of a system that kept her medicated against her will, controlled in every aspect of her life, and exploited as a renewable resource. It was an act of silent rebellion, but devastating to the structure that depended entirely on their obedience and productivity. Without Britney working voluntarily, everything began to fall apart like inevitable dominoes. The residency was immediately suspended, leaving a void of millions in projected revenue. Administrators faced internal scrutiny they had never anticipated, with questions about the model's sustainability. Fans, always attentive, began to suspect something darker behind the cancellations, sharing theories on social networks. The media began to investigate in greater depth, revealing leaks about the real conditions of the guardianship. The lawyers, feeling the legal and public pressure, began to resign one by one, distancing themselves from the case. Internal rumors spoke of excessive medication that made her feel disconnected, veiled threats of consequences if she did not comply, and absurd restrictions such as the prohibition of removing her contraceptive device or even driving her own car. The public image of the empire, which had been carefully curated as protective and necessary, could no longer be sustained under the weight of these revelations. Because a system based on absolute control only works as long as the controlled person obeys without question. And Britney, after years of enforced silence, had ceased to obey, breaking the fragile balance that kept the empire afloat. Free Britney, the final collapse. What the entertainment industry didn't anticipate at all was the transformative power of digital culture in the hands of dedicated fans. The hashtag Free Britney movement began as isolated murmurs of loyal followers on forums and social media, questioning inconsistencies in the official narrative of the conservatorship. But it quickly morphed into one of the most influential and organized digital uprisings of the decade, a phenomenon that united millions in a common cause. Independent podcasts such as Britney's Gram leaked explosive inside information, analyzing recordings and documents that suggested systematic abuse. High-profile celebrities such as Paris Hilton, who shared personal anecdotes of friendship with Britney, Cher with viral tweets of support, and Miley Cyrus using her platform to amplify the message, added media pressure that was impossible to ignore. Global media, such as the New York Times and Netflix, began to thoroughly investigate the structure of the conservatorship, producing documentaries that exposed the legal and financial details. And millions of people around the world demanded that Britney's voice be heard, staging virtual and physical protests outside the courthouse. In June 2021, Britney spoke for the first time in court without a script or filters in a public hearing that was broadcast live. What he said was so shocking and crude that it collapsed any possible defense of the guardianship. She stated that she was forced to work against her will, to medicate herself with debilitating substances, to use contraception against her desire to start a family. She stated that she had lived in a state of constant fear, with her phone monitored and her freedom restricted as if she were a prisoner in her own mansion. At that point, the empire completely collapsed. The associated brands broke contracts to avoid scandal. Lawyers began to resign en masse, fearing lawsuits. The administrators were publicly pointed out as participants in an abusive system. Fans pushed the narrative to an irreversible point, turning #FreeBritney into a symbol of justice. The court no longer had any way of justifying exploitation disguised as protection. The fall was not only economic, with millions in losses in canceled projects, it was moral, a collapse of legitimacy that destroyed the facade of empire forever. Freedom and ruins. What's left of the empire? In November 2021, after 13 years of legal and emotional battles, Britney Spears regained full control of her life in a landmark court decision. The empire, however, did not survive this liberation intact. When Britney regained her freedom, the financial machinery that had lived off her for so long stopped working efficiently and automatically. With no mandatory contracts to tie her to endless tours, no forced Las Vegas residencies to generate predictable income, no arena-filling fake tours, and no systematic production of products like perfumes or albums under pressure, the empire was left empty and fragmented. The administrators faced lawsuits for embezzlement and abuse, with millions at stake in lawsuits that exposed their financial motivations. The associated companies lost their main asset, Britney's name and image, which were now toxic to any brand that wanted to avoid controversy. Lawyers stopped charging exorbitant fees, quitting one after another to save their reputations. Brands walked away from the case, canceling endorsements and licenses that had generated fortunes. And the world began to see guardianship not as a benign legal measure, but as a business strategy disguised as family caregiving, a scheme that prioritized money over humanity. Britney today controls an estimated net worth of $60 million, a sum much smaller than what she generated at her peak, but ultimately hers without intermediaries or court approvals. Her book, The Woman in Me, released in 2023, sold millions of copies worldwide and gave her back something priceless she had lost for years: her personal narrative, her authentic voice to tell her story on her own terms. She explores musical projects for pure pleasure, not contractual obligation, collaborating with artists who inspire her and releasing singles when she feels the time is right. She lives away from the constant scrutiny of paparazzi, traveling to quiet destinations, writing in private journals, and rediscovering herself after decades of being defined by others. For the first time in more than a decade, Britney is simply Britney. Not an asset on a balance sheet, not a marketable brand, not a product on a shelf. Just a free woman, capable of deciding her future without invisible chains. A woman whose freedom destroyed a multi-billion-dollar empire that should never have existed under such oppressive conditions. An empire built on hidden pain, forced silence, and absolute control. Today, what's left of that empire isn't just scattered money or broken contracts. It's a powerful warning to the entertainment industry and to the world at large. A story of how apparent success can become a gilded prison, and how, sometimes, destroying an empire is the only true way to regain a full and authentic life.